So we'll just give a few more minutes and then get ready to get going. Carol, I forwarded some of your notes to Katie. So if when you want to share your insights into the House legislative session, she can screen share and put some of those, some of your narrative up.
Very fine.
So you can, I'll just let you lead with her on how you want to do that, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Lori, is that an intentional hand raise? Okay.
No, sorry, I was muting my microphone. It's 2 minutes.
Well, we have everyone but Senator Bray on so far. I think we'll just get started and hopefully he'll be logging in any minute. Let me just get started and we can begin to move on with our agenda. So welcome everyone. I'm Mark Nod. I'm chair of the Vermont Citizen Advisory Committee on the Lake Champlain's future. This is the last meeting of the fiscal year for us. Thank you all for working through Teams meetings and all of this disruption, and I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing you all in person at our July retreat if it works for everybody and at a place someplace nice on the edge of the lake. And we'll talk about those details later on in the meeting. I think everybody knows everyone else. I don't see any public. Katie, is there any other public members logged in? I don't see anybody.
Not that I see.
So we'll move on. As I mentioned in my email today, I'm not sure if everyone saw it. Senator Bray will be joining us. He has replaced Senator Lyons as another of the Senate appointees. David reached out, was going to attend today's meeting and then couldn't with a family matter. And I invited Senator Lyons to attend just so at least we could share our appreciation and thanks. And it doesn't look like she's going to join us either. I will invite she and Bill also to perhaps attend our retreat with us. Maybe they can have lunch and attend and see them in person, have the opportunity to thank them for their long service to the CAC, to the lake, and to Vermont sometime when we can all be in person. So I'm going to keep moving on with the agenda. I don't see any public comments. We'll hold that, and if someone joins us, we'll give them an opportunity to weigh in. The first thing on the agenda for any business before we get into our conversation about legislative activities and then budget impacts as they relate to our work. Katie shared the May 10th meeting. I guess I'd entertain a motion to accept those minutes. Wayne, thanks. A second? Lori? Any discussion on the minutes? Senator Bray, welcome.
Thank you. Sorry, it took me a little while to get here. My computer seemed to have lost track of Teams since I haven't used it for a month.
Well, thanks and welcome. We were just going through welcome and introductions. I had just been noting we hoped that David Mears, Senator Lyons, and Bill Howland might log in just so that we could thank them for their time on the CAC. And hopefully we'll be able to see them in person, perhaps at our retreat. We'll invite them as we sort of discuss lake issues in our agenda for next year. Hopefully we can get together next month. There's no public, so we moved on from public comments, and we're just approving our May 10th meeting minutes.
Thanks very much for recapping a little bit there, and sorry to make you repeat anything.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. Any comments or revisions for the meeting minutes? Okay, I think I found it's easier. Just any abstentions or any abstentions to acceptance of the minutes? Any opposition? Thanks, Senator Bray.
I need to abstain. Not having been there for the event.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so the first part of our meeting tonight, we asked our legislative members to share with us some of their insights, their thoughts on legislative activities and budgetary impact. And so I know Representative Odie has prepared a start of some comments and thoughts for what happened in the House. And so I thought we'd start with Carol, and then we can move on to any Senate. Perhaps Senator Bray, you can let us know some highlights or some pending opportunities that you think we might be able to discuss over the summer, and opportunities for activity for us to weigh in with our action plan next fall. So, Carol, I'm going to let you and Katie manage from here on out until you're wrapped up. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. I thought that based on some of the conversations we had in the past, that you might just want to know how to navigate the legislative website to see all the bills that have been introduced, and then to see what's happened to them. So if you go to the Vermont there's nothing up on here, but if you go to the Vermont legislature to the website, and you can go to a committee webpage, And then you can go to bills in and out of committees. And when you do that, you can see once you're on the committee webpage, you can see a large white box in the middle, and the default is to be in documents and handouts, but you can change that and select bills in and out of the committee. And the white box will then change to that selection. And from here, the options along the top are in committee, out of committee, referred to committee, and sponsored by committee. And then you can see in the email that I sent, there, an important page would be the bills out of, well, it's all important, okay? So the bills in natural resources, for example, you have a long list, about 30 bills, and then you can see, are any of these having to do with Lake Champlain? And then you can see, let's see. Then you can see bills out of committee that have actually passed. And you can click on the links to those bills to see where they are. And that will give you some insight and into what's happening. So you can look in the House for that. You can look in the Senate, and you can look at agriculture and forestry, House Natural Resources, and in this case, in this past session, House Human Services, because they did work on PFAS chemicals. So basically, in House Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife, H175 updated the Vermont's 50-year-old bottle bill, and the committee did some work on old growth forests, and they're working on a bill to encourage and protect old forests through an expansion of the use value program. In H108, Vermont's Clean Water Quality Standards passed, and this is an act relating to Vermont standards for issuing a clean water Section 401 certification. And it passed both bodies, and it puts in place evaluation tools that the state needs to assess large projects that require federal licensing or permits, such as proposed oil or gas pipeline projects, and it clarifies longtime interpretation and practice that Vermont's water quality standards apply to all of our surface waters, rivers, streams, lakes, ponds, and wetlands. H446 is an act that relates to miscellaneous resources and development subjects, and it passed the House, and it has to do with water quality monitoring and whether the phosphorus load from new development permitted by the Secretary of A&R in the Lake Champlain watershed in the previous calendar year is achieving at least a 70% phosphorus load reduction. Then in House Human Services, PFAS chemicals that have contaminated drinking water in Bennington and North Bennington, and that have led to adverse health effects, increased risk of cancer, and so forth. That passed, and rather than limiting the solutions to downstream cleanup, S20 addresses the issue upstream by preventing toxic substances from entering our state. S20 prohibits the manufacture and sale of PFAS from 4 products that pose the highest risks to Vermonters' well-being, including food packaging, fire extinguisher foam, and firefighting PPE, rugs, carpets, and ski wax. And then House Ag and Forestry, we had a big presentation about the big book of agriculture, so I don't have to talk about that. Food scraps as chicken feed, well, S102 calls now food scraps and agricultural input, and there'll be rules and regulations that add guardrails to these compost making chicken farming operations to exempt them from Act 250 solid waste permitting, but will subject them to required agricultural practices. And now that food scraps are supposed to go through our trash, per Act 148, our universal recycling law, they can be redirected to chickens. And then there is a new agricultural innovation board created. H434 creates this board and takes on the task of Vermont Pesticide Advisory Council and Vermont Seed Review Committee, and tackles areas of concern such as pesticide use and how to reduce it, and the use of agricultural plastic and how to transition to more biodegradable materials. We're the only state that has a seed review committee that allows for the review of seed traits of new genetically engineered seed proposed for sale, distribution, or use in the state. And the legislature created this the last biennium in response to the use of dicamba, which is a pest controlling herbicide in other parts of the country. We're going to take a more holistic approach to soil health and pesticide use. Those are some of the things that have been happening that, you know, relate to water quality. In the budget, let's see if I can find what I've put together for that. You can find the budget and clean water and the budget on the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation website. And there are particular lines that have to do with clean water, but basically the budget, our grants and contracts focused on phosphorus and nutrient pollution reduction in 4 sectors: agriculture, stormwater runoff, wastewater, and nature-based solutions. And if you want to see the specific line items, you can go to the DEC website and look at the numbers that I mentioned, which are in an email that I sent just before this meeting. Oh, and you can see that up on there. I don't know if it's kind of too small to see, but so, I mean, generally we have $225 million in this budget for 2022, which is truly wonderful for clean water. There is weatherization that has quite a bit of money, $250 million in it in this year's budget, but that is mostly focused on climate mitigation, on weatherization and housing. So that is a brief look at a legislative update and on clean water initiatives in the budget. There's so much I didn't know really what to talk about, but I was thinking maybe in the future we really should have a monthly legislative update from the House and the Senate, so you know what's being discussed in the different committees that has to do with clean water. It's kind of too much to do all at once here.
Mark, you're on mute.
I'd just like to comment, that's an excellent idea. That would be wonderful if that could happen. The monthly updates. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mark, you're on mute again.
I'm not sure you can get off of mute.
Is it the *6 or whatever, Lauren?
I don't think Mark's dialed in through his phone, so it should just be the button. Mark, do you see yourself on mute? No. Does anyone else want to say something in response to the presentation? Carol, now you're on mute.
Oh, I was going to say, if Mark gets off and rejoins, that might solve the mute problem. Or maybe if you could unmute all of us.
We only have the power to mute people.
Okay. Okay, Senator Brock.
I just wanted to add, just as a commentary, it seems like the activity regarding the lake all seemed to originate in the House in this session. Senator Bray chairs the Natural Resources Committee, where just about anything that relates to the lake and water quality actually originates. And I'm sure he will have a lot more to say than I do. I only deal on the committees that I'm on with the money, which is the least thing that we seem to worry about these days. The one thing that to me is important about what we did for the lake this year is what we didn't do. There were proposals to change the funding stream for the lake cleanup in terms of the promises that we made to the EPA. And there were proposals that went fairly far during the session that, because of the amount of federal money we were getting, to change the method that we use to fund the lake cleanup away from using part of the property transfer tax. And we resisted doing that. And I think that's important because it I think provided to the outside world, and particularly to the EPA, the commitment we had to continue to use a continuing funding source as opposed to making changes for the moment. I think it provided comfort that we were going to keep our word along the line. We did have a bill, and it may be some of the stuff that Carol alluded to. I haven't gone into the bill in detail, but there was H108, Act 32, in which we established standards by which ANR would issue a Clean Water Act certification for an activity that required a permit. And that's one of the things that did pass this year. But Senator Bray, Chris, you obviously dealt with this on a hands-on basis. And so you might be better able to address some of the things that your committee did specifically, some of which were enacted, but some of which obviously are still pending.
Sure. Thanks, Senator Brock. Well, one thing was that, there's always working behind the scenes. So for instance, on the budget proposal that was going to, maybe I would describe it as reappropriating the property transfer tax instead of funding the Clean Water Board efforts. We expressed as a committee, we can weigh in, and did so, about not diverting. That was a major accomplishment. It took many years of trying to finally get a commitment to fund our clean water work on a less ad hoc basis. And we were only like 2 years into that when we were going to do a 5-year detour. So it didn't seem very promising. In the end, we made our case to appropriations, and then appropriations in negotiations as the session went on, found another way to do that, pay for that work and keep the funding in place, which I think steadiness counts for a lot. The other thing I would just offer is thanks to Representative Odie for the spreadsheet and the summary. I wanted to talk a little bit, if you're looking in the budget and trying to find where do we actually pass things, it gets tricky to find because I think it was like about a 250-page bill this year. So this year in section G as in George 700 is where you can find the money related to the clean water work. And I can walk through that really briefly with folks. So it's $100 million in fiscal year 22, appropriated as follows. $10 million for stormwater retrofit projects, and that includes 5.5 C on the 3-acre stormwater permitting design and construction, $1 million to Forest Parks and Rec to support their compliance with the 3-acre stormwater rule, $3.5 million to Agency of Transportation to implement the 3-acre rule, and then secondly, $10 million tranche of money to Department of Environmental Conservation to support wastewater projects and pre-treatment activities. And that's split up as follows: $8 million to support design and construction of up to 10 community-scale water or decentralized wastewater projects to support underserved designated centers. $2 million to provide financial assistance to municipalities, Vermont businesses, and nonprofit entities to install or enhance pre-treatment processes. So, an example of that might be a brewery, for instance, where it has high BOD effluent and it needs pre-treatment. In section 3, $10 million to DEC again, to assist municipalities to design and construct projects to reduce or eliminate wet water sewer overflows. Number 4, $5 million to make repairs and improvements to wastewater treatment systems in Vermont homes. And there's a breakout of allocations there, including $4.25 million to the Department of Environmental Conservation for loan forgiveness when people have failed residential on-water wastewater systems, and $3.25 million to provide financial assistance or loan forgiveness to mobile home parks. Moving on to the 5th section, $10 million. We have a lot of big numbers this year. It's unlike any other year I've ever been able to report out. $10 million to Department of Environmental Conservation for allocation of the Clean Water Board. And number 6, $50 million to the Agency of Natural Resources to carry forward and to be used as follows: 20 to the Clean Water Board for fiscal year 23 and 24, $30 million for the allocation for fiscal years 23 and 24 for drinking water, sewer, and stormwater infrastructure projects, including dam safety requirements and CSO abatement. $5 million, section 7, in landscape resilience and design to mitigate flood hazards. And there's a breakout there. Skipping on, $15 million to the capital fund to support appropriate projects in water and sewer infrastructure. And that pretty much wraps up that section of the G700 section. So it's a very unusual year to be reporting out. You know, usually we're hoping to find 2, 3, 5, 10 million, and this year we're talking about 100 million. And we're looking ahead. We also, just one quick note, and then I'll stop. There is the American Jobs Plan under discussion in Washington, D.C. The infrastructure, also referred to as the infrastructure bill. It's controversial. How much money will be allocated is under discussion, but we have a very, I'd say, talented and senior congressional delegation, which usually does well at making sure that the small state minimum sends Vermont a good level of support on any kind of program that comes out. It's infrastructure oriented, and we'll probably know sometime in October what that kind of money is going to look like, but we may well have more opportunities to invest in clean water infrastructure through that bill, and the spending window for it is longer. It is, as I've heard it described so far, it's looking at 8 years to spend that money. The ARPA money, you may all have heard already, is roughly a 3-year spending window. So the point is, we have a lot of money, more than we've ever seen, and we're trying to do 2 things that are a little bit intentional. One is to get out there and spend, beginning as soon as possible, but we're also trying to slow down enough so that we make smart investments and we don't end up a year or 2 from now saying we wish we had allocated otherwise. So there's a tension between good speed and being prudent at the same time. So that, I suppose that completes my report. Thank you.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
remarkable. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Senator Brock. Thank
I just
you,
want
Senator
to add
Bray.
The other things, Chris covered the big items that are in the budget. There are also a number of other smaller items that appear elsewhere scattered around, such as, for example, the capital bill. There's some infrastructure money for drinking water supply and drinking water the state revolving fund of $2.2 million. There's dam safety and hydrology projects, $310,000. A variety of other dam projects of various kinds. Contaminants of emerging concern for $500,000. infrastructure rehabilitation, including small scale rehabilitation, wastewater repairs, and so on, $5 million. 3-acre stormwater rule compliance, $325,000. And then last but not least, for the Lake Champlain Walleye Association to upgrade and repair the walleye rearing, restoration, and stocking infrastructure, $25,000.
Thank you. So I apologize. I missed maybe 5 to 10 minutes of your comments, Senator Brock, and early part of yours, Senator Bray. I wondered whether for you and Representative Odie, were there any or are there any bills that you think would be worthy for us to consider and pay closer attention to as we're preparing for next year, that you think might get taken up, that maybe there just wasn't enough time as you all were working so hard to figure out how state and federal funding were going to be allocated in order to meet the various timelines and opportunities that had been presented with the Recovery Act funds?
I would offer, this isn't really bill oriented, but there have been a number of reports from the auditor about clean water investment decisions. And I think every legislator feels pretty keenly the need to be, meet our fiduciary responsibility and make sure that we're making wise investments. I mean, I know that's shared by everyone in this group as well. And so there have been a couple audit reports that I think have, just highlighted the need for us to always be open, keep our eyes open and open-minded about, have the choices we've made been the most cost-effective choices. So I think we'll check in as a committee to just make sure that we're on track and that we can then report out well to our constituents that we have reviewed those spending choices and that we are, in fact, making wise decisions about how to address and prioritize, water quality work. Even though there's more money than ever, I think, we still, it's just as important or maybe more important than ever that we make sure that we have good accountability on how we're spending it and what we're getting done. Because there's no amount of money that we'll ever receive that will address all of it. Right. So we're still prioritizing and still looking to be effective.
I think one of the things that we also need to do, not just with the money going to the lake, but with all the various sources of money that we've received this year, is we haven't, I don't think, spent enough time looking at the whole issue of return on investment and also just on measuring from an accountability standpoint. Are we getting something back that's warranting the amount of investment that we've made? And I think we do need to improve our oversight of the funds that we're expending.
I would say we should keep an eye on Act 250 reforms, updating Act 250, because we should keep our forest blocks intact and protect our high elevation flood headwaters, because those are the things that bring the higher quality water down into our lake. That wildlife corridors and their protection are very important also, because of the way animals move, and that it's all linked together with the healthy water. And the idea of river corridor areas and building in those areas, and how Act 250 or any other bill might deal with that, so that we have flood resiliency and protection of our stream and river banks, such that we will get less runoff that will go down into the lake. So I think those are things to be watching for.
Thanks, Wayne. Muted.
put my 2 cents in here, especially with having all the legislators on. You know, I deal with all these funding programs in my work life, you know, as an engineer, and be mindful of all this money is wonderful, but also keep in mind the limited state staffing levels at the moment. You know, with a hiring freeze, things are very difficult at the moment, administratively, managerial, permitting, all the above. Very concerned with all this extra funding that's coming down with the state, you know, the staff resources, just being able to administer these programs and help move projects along. It's been very, very difficult, obviously with the COVID and other things in the last 4 to 6 months, but major concern moving forward. I mean, all this funding is wonderful. It's great. But we need to remember to make sure we've got the state staffing and resources there to support the programs moving forward.
Thanks, Wayne. Senator Bray?
Yeah, a question then. Thanks, Wayne. I have a question to just follow up, make sure I understand. Can you talk a little bit about the, is this around turnaround time when you're making permit applications, or, and was that an issue pre-COVID, or is it, we were doing fine pre-COVID, it's just the increased volume of money that needs to be moved through the system that's generating a concern?
Chris, I think it's kind of all the above. I would say some of it has to do with the difficulty of just filling open positions, finding qualified staff. It's everything from, you know, I do primarily municipal work, and it's everything from processing funding applications, review of engineering services agreements, processing of permitting applications, you know, getting state support approval to move construction projects. It's really just a function, you know, and a lot of the people are doing a great job. They're working hard, they're doing what they can, but frankly, they're overworked. And it's making it difficult, you know, something that we're pushing on behalf of the municipality. You know, it's very slowed up with a lot of these issues just to try to move some of these projects forward. And, you know, it's going to get tougher, I guess, if those staffing levels aren't improved or changed with all this money coming down. It's going to become more difficult. Some of the toughest I think I've seen in my career in the last 4 to 6 months. And obviously some of that has to do with COVID, but they're just, many of these programs are just understaffed, and they need some more help there to try to help move this forward.
Okay, thank you. If I may, can I follow up with another question?
Absolutely.
Sure. I see Eric here. Hi, Eric. I don't expect you to speak for all agriculture, but are you seeing the same kind of bottleneck happening on the ag funding side?
Actually, I find it to be pretty good lately. The correspondences have been good. The programs seem to be going along well. I don't know what the volume is because I'm just out here as a, you know, one operation, but right. I think so far from the ag point of view, I think we're doing quite well.
Okay, great. Thanks. Good to hear that.
Anyone else for now? Go ahead, Bob.
I guess just to speak for the municipalities, to echo Carol's, yes, exactly. Which is not municipalities, speaking with the high altitude and everything else and the forest fragmentation, 100% agree. But to echo Wayne's, yeah, it's very difficult, especially at the municipal level. We're a very small state, and many of these municipalities really just, you know, don't have the staffing to really, or the expertise to potentially deal with this.
If I may, one other bit of funding that some of the other good funding news is that I think, I'm trying to remember the exact grant size. It's something on the neighborhood of 152 million is going out to municipalities to be, they will have choices with some constraints about how to fund things. Because I know there was an energy project that had a direct allocation that was withdrawn because there was still going to be a lot of money going to municipalities. And if they wanted to do this particular energy project, like weatherization work for municipal buildings, for instance, that they would now have the money in hand to do that. So rather than make a direct allocation, they were deferring to towns to make their own choices. I don't know if that 152 will be what that's going to mean. I think it's going to be prorated per capita, and then towns will have the ability to prioritize. But that might help on the technical assistance side for municipalities in terms of hiring the assistants, to do the engineering. On the other hand, if the permit can't get processed in time, then that's only half the equation. I know. So.
All right, I know that I had a question. I relayed it to Representative Odie. There was House 144, which was a septic inspection bill that didn't go anywhere. But I know that during our Basin Program Summit with the steering committee and leading up to it with our roundtables, as we were considering a suite of issues, very, very broad and some very specific issues for areas of focus for the Basin Program over the next year and then the next 5-year cycle. David Miller, who's at the Adirondack Council in their Clean Water Program, and some of you may know of him from his work on the Citizens Advisory Committee and the Long Island Sound Study, was very, well, he presented a white paper. We can share that perhaps for our, unless Katie or Lauren might have it handy, they could put it into the chat. He shared a white paper on septic, and he noted the volume of septic in the Adirondacks are similar to what Bob has always reminded us. We have septic in the 50+% range, one of the highest in the nation. And yet there's no requirement that septic systems are inspected. I think 144 was going to be a requirement, or has a component such a requirement that upon property transfers, so at the same time that you have to certify you have a potable water supply, you certify that at least in a transfer situation you have a functioning septic system. It occurred to me that that was a fairly reasonable tool to get a handle on the at least functionality, let alone the loads moving forward, as we've tried to take this all-in approach. And I know that here in the islands, I look at some of the camps and homes that are being converted on the shores, and I know there's absolutely no way at high water that the septic system can even function, let alone, it's literally underwater. So that's something that I thought we might bring up and discuss, and maybe get some more comment on for our work moving forward, as we're considering what else might be available for us as tools to get a handle on the things that weren't addressed with this massive infrastructure spending that we went through. And again, it's to me, it goes to the accountability as we hear the agricultural industry feeling really beat up about bearing the brunt of public angst. Most of the public don't seem to be paying a lot of attention to what they're actually doing when they're flushing, and are somewhat resistant to that. So it struck me it's part of the agency's all-in approach if we were to move forward with something like that. And we'll add that. Any more comments on budget or questions on budget or legislative activity before we move on?
No, I just wanted to say sorry. I had that on my mind all day and then didn't mention it just now. So sorry about that.
That's okay. I know it came up regularly as part of the roundtable conversations, and I had a chance to look at the white paper, and there's a lot of compelling reasons that we take a hard look at that. Senator Bray?
Yeah, so a quick question. I don't know if I was under the impression it was under law, but maybe it's just practice that at a time of a real estate transaction, that septic systems are always tested and certified. Is that, like, but maybe that was just realtors, trying to have good practice. Is there no law that requires the certification of a septic system at time of transfer, property transfer?
No, there's not that I'm aware of. Some realtors will require it as part of a home inspection, but even that is it's not a requirement.
Okay.
And it's, in my experience, it's fairly easy to get a visual, septic tank pumped and get a visual inspection with a camera of the actual lines these days. The technology has advanced so much that it's a few $100s to have the pumping, and then another few $100s to have the inspection, and a report from a certified technician. So I know that in Long Island, in his work, and again in New York, a lot of their focus is around the nitrates as a nutrient load from septic, less so the phosphorus load. But as we're trying to figure out the nitrogen phosphorus interaction as it relates to blue-green algae blooms and a suite of other complex systems as it impacts the lakes and other water bodies, it struck me as a fairly straightforward approach to try to get a better handle on it.
Okay. Thanks for filling me in. I don't know when the right moment is. I did have something I wanted to, just sort of float out to the group at some point. Sort of it'd be a long-term project. So I'll wait till you call on me.
Let me ask you to hold that for a second, Senator Bray. Bob, did you have something?
Oh, just very quick, just technical. Nitrates are because nitrogen's the limiting factor in salt water, and phosphorus is the limiting factor in fresh water. That's why. But I will also say that I just had assumed that it went on sale of a house, that it was an actual state requirement. I guess I did not realize that. But thank you.
No, it's not part of a continuing permit requirement. Anyone else? Senator Brock, or are you just adjusting your camera? Okay. Okay. Well, we'll have an opportunity to dig more into legislative work and budget as it rolls out, and as we think about our agenda for the retreat, hopefully in July. Next, I want to move to the a follow-up on the Basin Program's June summit that a number of our members participated in. So this year, for the first time, the Lake Champlain Basin Program invited a broader part of the community and stakeholders to participate in 2 days of roundtable discussions focused on the Basin Program's 4 thematic areas: clean water, healthy ecosystems, thriving communities, and informed and engaged citizens. I think I got all that right. And Katie or Eric Howe, I don't know if he made it, can correct me on that, or Meg. So then after the roundtable, the steering committee met with, I think there was in the neighborhood of 70 additional people involved, and went through and tried to assess key themes that would be areas of focus over the next year, and then the next 3 to 5 years, with the opportunities for action, the blueprint for the Basin Program's activity. So I would say 90+% of the work got done. There's a follow-up meeting coming up. I wonder maybe Colleen or Meg, if you are available, you might be able to provide some, or Lauren. Actually, Lauren, you were a technology extraordinaire managing everybody. Would you be any of you be available just to provide, as Basin Program staff, a quick update on where we are with the summit and what are the immediate next steps?
I think Lauren should take that.
Yeah, thanks, Meg. So where we're at is that we had great discussions, as Mark described, around the 4 thematic areas of the Basin Program: clean water, healthy ecosystems, thriving communities, and informed and involved public. Super close, Mark. And the steering committee took into account all of the recommendations brought forward from the roundtable events and from the morning discussions. And came away with the ask to the Basin Program staff to further go back into the lists and refine the ideas, because some of the ideas that were brought out during the discussions were very large and expansive, and some items were very small and concrete. So Eric will be working with our staff to further refine that list and make all of the action items kind of line up by breadth and then categorized by goal. And we'll be sharing that with the steering committee members. And I believe the doodle poll is open for a July or August steering committee meeting to spend time reviewing the June summit event itself, going through all of the priorities that were identified, having a discussion around them, and then the output of that meeting would be a vote on at least the budget priorities for our fiscal year 22 budget, and then maybe lay out a framework for discussions for our 2022 opportunities for action management plan, which would last from 2022 to 2027. Thank you, Meg. So it looks like July 20th is the date for that steering committee meeting. And we, from the logistics of the summit perspective, we sent a follow-up survey to all of the participants of that meeting and received great feedback. And we'll be reviewing that tomorrow and making a game plan for how we can be most productive in this type of event as we move forward. Because even though we ran out of time to get all of the action items done, and so missed that mark, we really enjoyed, and we got the feedback that people enjoyed the cross-committee collaborations. That was the first time we tried doing that to develop our budget priorities.
Great, thanks, Lauren. So it was a really interesting and great opportunity, and I guess a new process for the Basin Program to pursue. And I know, thanks, Hillary and Bob and Lori all participated in it. Do you guys have any comments on that process or thoughts as it relates to our work on the CAC? Bob or Hillary? Lori?
Sure. It was great to have an ability to participate in that. I think, it was a very condensed, intense process. I think we all felt, rushed going through it. And I'm just wondering, if when we come out of the steering committee process, the steering committee is going to vote on these, will we see the results of that? Because I think there are some priorities that we as a CAC may want to continue to push in different arenas that may not move forward in the 5-year or 1-year agenda. And, I think there's still a need for the CAC to circle back and discuss this as a body and see how we might want to also, pitch some of our priorities too.
Mark, can I add something?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Meg.
Okay, thanks, Lori. Yeah, I think the rushed part of the whole process was at the end, we asked our steering committee members to rank the different topic areas that were proposed in the 4 different sections. And that process, I think, is what people felt rushed with. So we're going to step back, consolidate and reorganize those different topic areas and provide another opportunity to rank them. So that we can have more discussion, and you will absolutely see the result of that, Lori, for the CAC and for anybody else who participated. But then the steering committee will decide which topic priorities they want to move forward with for the next fiscal year and for the OFA priorities. But I think there's much more discussion to come.
Thanks. Hillary?
Okay. My mute keeps remuting itself. I agree with Lori that it would be great to see the final list. And then as we move forward on our next work plan, maybe there are things that we'd like to focus on. I also thought the really exciting thing for me participating was to be participating with so many people who are real specialists in their fields. And so hearing about folks who do work that's different than the work we might do, really honing in and focusing in on specific topics was really interesting and educational, and pretty just a really interesting thing to participate in. So thank you to LCBP for inviting us.
Thank you, Hillary. And I think the other thing I'd just like to say is that I know by design, Lauren had set it up with input so that we would have more cross-pollination with input from experts in the different areas, not only to their area of expertise, but to the other priority areas and opportunities for action.
And hi, this is Bob Fisher. I thought it was a great first attempt. I thought, there was plenty of things that could be better, but I thought it was excellent the way it was done. I think that it was the end voting process. It needed to be pared down into less categories, but I thought overall that it really wasn't, for being on Zoom, etc., and really roughing it out, that it was a really framework for how to do something for the future. I thought it was excellent.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, I agree. I think everyone was enthusiastic about that opportunity to have such a broad, sort of shared and thoughtful discussion and conversation with so many talented folks committed to the lake, and it was a great effort for a first time, and I'm happy that where we have the opportunity. I know staff maybe doesn't feel so excited about an extended part of the project, but that we get another bite at the ranking and some refinement on that last part of the process. It did feel a little bit rushed. Colleen?
Yeah, thanks. I was just going to add, especially for Bob and Mark and Lori, I think you're right. It did feel a little bit rushed. And I think we chose staff to keep that list fairly long the first time because we wanted to make sure that the steering committee members and other committee members had a chance to view those original comments. So it's something that I think you'll see some tweaking, but we didn't want to leave anyone's comments out in this first attempt. So thanks for all that good feedback.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll look forward to that. I don't think, in fact, I'm almost certain that we likely won't have any follow-up from the Basin program in time for our discussions at our retreat, but we'd be part of an agenda at our first meeting in September, I think. So we'll be sure that we take a look at what comes out, and you all will have a chance to see some of the results of that even before then, as soon as it comes out. So I know that we have a few public members that joined us, and we bypassed public comment early in our meeting because of we didn't have any public in attendance. But I see that John Roberts has joined us, and there was someone else, but they seem to have dropped off. But John, I wonder, did you have any public comment to make? Do you want any thoughts for us as you're sitting there?
Mark, thank you. Not specifically. I was just listening in to see what you discussed tonight. I was impressed with some of the topics you did. I don't have any, I'm afraid, stunning remarks to make tonight. So keep up the good work and the good discussion. I appreciate being able to listen in on a regular basis. Thank you.
Well, thanks, John. We appreciate your participation when you can, and I just wanted to be sure that we didn't miss out an opportunity for our public comment period. So our next, Senator Bray, why don't I go back to you now? You can float out before we get into our committee membership and governance. Maybe now it's a good time for you to toss out your long-term project you had a thought on.
Sure. Thanks. And, to John Roberts' lack of a stunning remark, I know that when I'm in meetings and someone leads in with they have a stunning remark, I usually hold on to the table. Something, I don't know if it's always a good news when stunning remarks come up. So before I got pointed back to the this committee, I had wanted to share a perspective that emerged out of conversations related to the re-permitting of wastewater treatment facilities. I think from Rutland North, one of the last segments of re-permitting is that section. So Rutland, Pittsford, Middlebury, Virgins, et cetera. And this is a long-term vision, but it grows out of the story of the Vice Chair of Senate Natural Resources and Energy is Rich Westman from Cambridge, Vermont. He lives on the Lamoille River. And he was talking about growing up when there was still straight piping to the Lamoille. Then there was a major period of infrastructure investment. Well, before this investment was made, that it was highly recommended not to swim in the river and not to eat fish out of that river. There was too much going into the river, and that since all the wastewater treatment facilities have been built and other efforts have been going on that way, that there's been a lot of cleanup. And now we sit on any summer day, there's between 250 and 300 rental kayaks and canoes that get launched into the Lamoille. People float down. There's restaurants serving that group of people. There's vineyards nearby that bus people, back and forth. It's really become a major draw. He said, the river has taken on a whole new life as a source of recreational activity. And it just made me think about how the Otter Creek flows through Addison County, past Middlebury, Virgins, et cetera. And wouldn't it be great if over time, I know it would take steady investment, we could see the same kind of thing happen to Otter Creek, where it was cleaned up enough that it became a source of a regular recreation, more recreation, and people boating, floating, et cetera. And then all the kind of waterfront businesses that go along with it. So it probably sounds a little pie in the sky at this moment, but somehow they pulled it off on the Lamoille River. And this is just one of the groups where I thought I'd love to check in and see how do we, what does it take? Is it a 20-year vision? How do you get there? But if one river could do it, why not another? So that's the blue sky thought I've had in the last few months based on testimony we heard this session.
Jeff? Thanks, Senator Bray.
Yeah, I would endorse that proposal and point out that the Otter Creek is the longest river that's fully within the borders of the state of Vermont. Longer than the Lamoille, Winooski, or anything else that's fully within the borders, not shared like the Connecticut. So, and I do think that the starting point, which obviously is way in the past, but from today forward, that enormous progress has been made there as well. And so it wouldn't be a huge undertaking to accomplish what the senator has just proposed. I think that's something that I could see, for example, the municipalities along the route, chambers of commerce for those various regions and so forth, being perhaps inspired by that vision as well. So I very appreciate your comment, Senator.
Okay.
Anyone else? Thanks, Senator Bray. From my perspective, my sense is that no one has been bold enough to express that vision and invite people to embrace it. As my sense is, as we're plugging away, trying to work on programs and funding to support them, and struggling to find those resources until recently to do what we think we know needs to get done to get started, and then, as you said, have some good accountability. I'm just not sure that I've heard anyone really invite that sort of touchable, tangible vision for a water body. I know the basin programs, Opportunities for Action, tries that for the entire basin, but it sometimes feels out of grasp. And I think maybe the communities along the Otter Creek might find it actually graspable, and then figure out what everybody's job is to do to achieve it over the next 10 or 20 years. So it's an exciting thought. John?
I'm now I have a stunning thought now. No, following on from Senator Bray, I when I worked for the Agency of Ag, Laura DePietro, who's the head of the Water Quality Division, once a year she would get us all into our canoes, if we had them, or kayaks, and we would canoe a river or a section of a river in the state of Vermont. And we canoed on the Missisquoi, we canoed on the Lamoille, we canoed on, I think it's the Black River up near Westford, but we also canoed on Otter Creek, and we canoed from below the Weybridge Dam to Vergennes. And just a comment on, we obviously thought that the river was clean enough for us to do that. And we, but it's a very slow river most of the time. And from Weybridge to Vergennes, we realized after we'd been canoeing for 2 or 3 hours, and we weren't making a huge amount of progress, that maybe we'd bitten off, but we made it. And it was, so it's just an anecdotal tale. But I think it would be a great idea. And in my present capacity, I've worked with Matt Whitten of the Riverwatch program, and it would be interesting to actually see. I will ask Matt about the testing of the river and see what sort of results he's had. But anyway, so just kind of anecdotal comments there. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Jeff, is your hand up again or lingering? Okay. Senator Bray?
Well, so thanks. And since Jeff was the one to get excited, now I know I'm going to call him offline from this meeting and start talking with him. But when we talk to people at large about CSO events, et cetera, most of the population is not particularly excited to hear that something they don't like is going to be reduced. But if we and that's necessary. We all know it's necessary work, but if there were the sort of excitement of building more of a recreation economy along the river, that would be like, it would sort of go hand in hand with it. The infrastructure investment would enable the other to proceed, and the recreational side of things, I think, could be a real chance to get more people out on the water, get them interested in caring about it, and then those kind of infrastructure investments become not just a requirement or regulatory, but something of interest because they could imagine a benefit. So I'll keep chugging along on this one. Thank you for humoring me while we get started here.
Well, thanks again. So moving on, our next agenda item is committee membership and governance. And I understand that all of the citizen members should have received or will be receiving reappointment confirmations in the mail from the governor's office. I know that a few of you mentioned that you had received it, and one or two hadn't seen it. So it should be in your mailbox soon, but I can confirm from Sarah that all were reappointed, including Denise Smith, who was a member with many of us a number of years ago. I don't think she actually asked to be reappointed, but I might reach out to her and ask her to join us anyway, and see if, I think her kids are old enough that maybe she's got more time on her hands, because she was great to have on the committee previously, and is just a terrific person to advocate for the lake and for the St. Albans region. Bob?
Yeah, that's out of left field, but 100%, I completely echo that. 100% reach out to her. Thank you.
I know that her name lingered on our committee list for a while, and she ended up getting reappointed, I think, in part of the wholesale effort of the governor getting committee reassignments done. So we'll follow her up. But in any event, we have 2 or 3 committee members to add, and I don't think that we can do much around that tonight, but I would like it to be a topic and action item for us for our retreat and through the summer. And I think, I think one of the big issues for us is to continue to try to add voices that are part of the effort of the Basin Program and the agency and et cetera, to broaden and increase the opportunities for voices that we might not hear from, or who don't feel invited to be part of talking about the future of Lake Champlain, their ownership of it, and the issues that might impact their communities or their demographics. So the Basin Program has been pursuing committee membership process as they try to address some diversity, equity, and inclusion issues within the basin as a whole. And I'd like to be able to share that with you all prior to our meeting, and for all of you to be considering folks that you interact with in your communities that might be valuable additions to the CAC as we're trying to fill that. I also reached out to Speaker Krawinski to see who the new representative appointee will be, to try to be sure that we had everybody and in full attendance for our retreat and then for our first meetings in September. Governance. It's been an honor and a pleasure for me to act as your chair for the last, I think, 2 years now. We didn't go through an election process last year through our disruption. Bill Howland was our vice chair, but chose to step away. And so we need to go through a formal election of chair and vice chair. And because I didn't have any confirmation of actual reappointments until today, I hadn't done any further preparation. I was really waiting to be sure that we were all validly and authorized to move forward, and there weren't other potential candidates poised for nomination or appointment. So I'd like to move that to our retreat meeting too, if that works for everybody else, and just push that election off till then, and that gives us time to consider folks who might want to take a leadership position and step into the vice chair or chairmanship, chairwomanship, chairpersonship, and have some further discussion on it. Wayne, you have it? We've got you on mute still, Wayne.
Yeah, a little bit of a separate issue, Mark, but just finish your thought there.
Oh, no, I just, I wanted, I just would like to put off our election until the retreat time. Sure. And hopefully we'll have a full appointment, at least from legislative, and have a clear understanding of how many vacancies we do have, and then a sense of folks who might want to take a leadership position as chair or vice chair.
Yeah, Mark, I was just going to put my plug when you mentioned Denise, the Friends of Northern Lake Champlain. I'll put my plug in. They have their bike ride, Bike for the Lake, on Saturday. Great event. I think I've done that except for last year, probably like 8 or 10 consecutive years. Great fundraiser. And, you know, the 25, 30-mile ride, the 60 ride is awesome. You go over to the New York side and up the west side of the lake. So I was just going to put my plug in. It's a great event.
Yeah, thanks. It is. I missed their fundraiser at the Tyler Place this year. It's always a good opportunity for folks to get together and reconnect around Lake Champlain. So, Bob?
I just to expound, I should have explained it probably better that I'm one of the longest serving members. So I served with Denise for a long time. Although Eric has been on beyond all comprehension, Eric Clifford. I don't think anyone even realizes that hardly. But yeah, Denise would be great.
Well, I'll reach out and see if she is enthusiastic about her reappointment. She may just be surprised and baffled. We'll see. So any more discussion on membership and governance, at least as it relates to elections, and then our further discussions on fulfilling vacancies? Okay, you know, one of the opportunities that's presented with us, particularly with Katie's role, is her opportunity to facilitate the coordination and interaction with the Vermont, for us on the Vermont CAC, to New York and Quebec and the CACs there. And you know, we got a taste of that with the very sort of intensive, collaborative, and inclusive opportunities with the roundtables and the summit for the Basin program. And so I just wanted to throw out and brainstorm a bit on some people's thoughts on how and when we might consider some increased connection and participation with New York and Quebec. We had in the past had attempts at joint meetings, and I think we tried to coordinate with Quebec up at the Tyler Place because so many members of various the committees were attending, including New York. And so I think we had a chance to have a joint meeting maybe once or twice then. I don't think that trying to include Vermont and Quebec into our retreat next month, I don't think it'll work for Pierre coming down from Quebec because the border probably will not be open yet. Maybe some of the New York folks might be able to come across or connect via Teams or Zoom. But I'd really like us to think about, whether and how we might like to have more engagement with them on some of these aligned interests around the lake, and then opportunities to, share the diversity of expertise that's on the various committees and have a chance to have some broader conversations and networking and sharing. So, Lori?
Sure. I think that's great. This is certainly something I know I've, been one of the advocates for, and I think that we may need to have a task force or, a subcommittee of the CAC going forward where we focus in on these issues, particularly early on, because before you know it, we can be a year out from this intention of having greater collaboration. So I think that that's something we should definitely talk about at the retreat. In the past, we certainly collaborated with our partners on the oil transport issue. And I think, more recently, just raising our concerns about pesticides and herbicides and trying to promote a joint effort rather than just a solo Vermont effort. And I think there are a number of things that will come up through the State of the Lake process, the process that we just had, that are things that the CACs may want to work on together and gain greater traction. So I think it would be, one, good to have it as a priority item, agenda item for our retreat, to have some outcome of that be a working task force or some follow-up that we would need to do, and that we're going to probably need to put in more time, at least this first year, as we figure out an effective working effort amongst the Vermont, New York, and Quebec CACs.
Great points, Lori. I agree. I think having a bit of a task force to work with Katie. Katie's been here, but really hasn't had a chance to get her feet out on the ground or out in and on the lake. And I know that she's set some goals and priorities to try to have some connections to people and places scattered around the basin to try to have a better sense of the who and the where for all of our work. So I think if she does that too, we can help her bring some folks along in on that conversation from the other committees. I know she's worked a lot with the New York CAC and probably not very much with Pierre and the Quebec OBBBM, but perhaps we can get Pierre and Vic at least to attend at least a portion of our retreat to be able to weigh in with their thoughts on that too, as they get their members engaged. So thanks. We will definitely make that a retreat priority.
I'll just add that the New York CAC has also expressed interest in a joint meeting. They mentioned the fall, so if we could figure out something in time for that, I'm obviously happy. It's my job to help facilitate something like that. I have not interacted so much with the Quebec CAC yet. They're structured differently and their meetings aren't open to the public, so we're still figuring out how I can get more involved there and how we can support that cross CAC collaboration.
That's great, thanks. So I think that's a good segue into our July retreat planning. And we're actually on schedule. Katie, I didn't log in to see the results of the doodle poll. Do we have a good date for most people?
So 8 people responded, and it looks like July 21st and 22nd are the best dates for those who responded.
Okay. Jeff, your hand up?
Yeah, is there a possibility that there could be a remote, I know for a long meeting, especially with the way the interactions work the best in the case of a retreat? I totally understand. And besides, everybody just wants to get in the same room together again. I totally get it. But I'm going to be in North Carolina for the entire month. If I could participate at least part of it remotely, I'm sure that could be accommodated. If you're going to be doing that for others, and there's a desire to create, at least for some limited portion of the meeting, wouldn't necessarily have to be for every minute, but the only way I could be there would be through a tool such as the one we're using right now. I'd love to at least, participate a bit.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I think it was our intent to, well, my goal was to hopefully find a place that we could all meet in person, even socially distance, almost outside if necessary, as a way that we could at least be in the same place together. And we also, I think, always intended that we would have a remote functionality, whether it's Teams or Zoom or whatever works best at the location. We were working on a date, and now that we have 2 good dates for a majority of folks, we'll try to work on a location. I had a notion of the Grand Isle Lake House up here in the islands because it's not being used as a wedding venue, and the Preservation Trust was just using it for very limited. I don't know what the Wi-Fi is like there, but I thought with Preservation Trust we might be able to inquire. It's such a magical place that we could at least be alongside the lake and somewhere. Otherwise, we've thought about a few other locations, perhaps more towards the south part of the lake. So we'll follow up on that and come up with a place and a more firm schedule, and we will commit to having some digital connectivity so everyone can participate. So thanks for that. We will do that. Agenda items. So it sounds like July 21st and 22nd. Are there, provided we support with Teams or Zoom, is there anyone that can't make it at all on either of those dates? I'm hoping that it's far enough out that if there's anybody needs to juggle their schedule a little bit, they might still have the opportunity to. And we'll work quickly on a location to firm up which one of those dates might work best for everyone. So I didn't see anyone, so that's great. Perhaps this is all going to work out. As far as agenda, I have 4 items that we had set up previously. Committee membership and governance was one. Continued follow-up on legislative and budget issues as it relates to our work and Lake Champlain, and then perhaps some follow-up on any legislative issues that we should be focusing on as we're planning our action plan for next year. The New York, Quebec, and Vermont CAC joint meeting and sort of enhanced coordination with Katie's work, and then a sort of round robin of issues, thematic issues, as we set up our meetings, our regular schedule, and as in the past, we've tried to begin to lay out and sort of project 3, 4, or 5 themes within our core themes. We set aside a 2-year plan around agriculture, future of agriculture, and impacts to the lake. Part of that is part of the pesticide, and the other is climate change, climate economy, recreation economy, and the other components that might relate to those opportunities. So are there other agenda items that folks would like to see? Oh, I guess the last one was opportunities to invite agency or other experts to provide short presentations and updates for us on any topics or items of concern. I know that a few agency folks, Oliver Pearson and Neil Kamen, both offered to make themselves available for updates and presentations on where the agency is headed in those various programs, just to be sure that we're clear on their priorities and their agendas. And then Oliver had mentioned update on Lake Carmi, which had come up as a possible presentation during our last series of meetings, but we never had time available to bring him in. So he reminded me that he had a standing offer to be able to present on all of the efforts around Lake Carmi and the successes and or continued challenges they've been having after installation of the aeration system and those other infrastructural investments there. Do other members have topics they'd like us to consider or to try to bring as a priority for our meeting in our retreat? Senator Bray?
Well, I think it probably goes hand in hand. I was going to ask, and I'll be happy to follow up after the meeting to learn more about what you've already done on herbicides, pesticides, et cetera. But I have a longstanding interest in soil health, and really, I don't think in my window into state government that we often look at soil as an ecosystem and realize the complexity of it and the opportunity to improve water quality as well as plant health, crop yields, all the rest based on soil health. And so I don't know what kind of work's going on already in terms of impacts of biocides on soils, and if the committee is looking into that one, because the sense I've had is that they go hand in hand. Healthier agricultural practices are also healthier for soils. This is not news to anyone, but what do we mean by that, and how do they relate to pesticide use? And I've done some research into it and feel like I'm only in an early stage of understanding it. Maybe this committee's already delved much more deeply into it, but so I'd love to learn more about the connections there between a vibrant ag economy and the soil health that goes to support it, and then the water quality benefits that come from it.
Thanks, Senator Bray. I'll follow up and update you on where the committee is, but let me get Wayne and Carol to weigh in first. Wayne?
Mark, I had his thought on climate change, and I'm not sure who the speakers should be on this, but just being kind of curious as to what some of the short and long-term impacts of what we're seeing, are going to have effect on water quality. I'm sitting out here looking at the lake levels, probably 2.5 feet below normal right now. Things are going to be tough later this spring, and I'm not sure how much control we even have over some of these issues, but just becoming more educated on some of the trends and how they look moving forward, kind of specifically, and how they relate to the health of the lake and water quality.
Okay, thanks. We'll dig in and I'll have some conversations with the Basin Program and see whether there's opportunities for some of their team to perhaps support us there. Carol?
Thanks. We had a presentation a few years ago about toxins in water and toxins in the lake, and I would like to have that presentation again, and I'd like to have it recorded so we can post that so people see what we are facing with our water supply and toxins. And then I'd like to have a plan of action that we put together if we think it's important to do that.
Thanks, Carol. I just comment quickly. So Matt Vaughn at the Basin Program, part of the technical advisory committee, and the team there reminded me that toxins are naturally occurring and toxics are the thing that we typically talk about with inorganic chemicals that find their way into our waters.
Thank you. I'll say that next time.
I went back and made a unilateral amendment to our resolution that we were talking about toxics, not toxins, because I think that's what I wrote. Quickly, Senator Bray, the CAC presented a resolution that then was supported by the New York CAC and the Quebec CAC, requesting the Basin Program take on an approach for monitoring and analysis for the presence of toxics in the lake and the tributaries. That set off an extensive discussion with the executive committee, with the steering committee, a meeting with the technical advisory committee of the Basin Program to assess how they might approach that, which led to I guess a recognition that they needed to really gather experts and see what's known, what's unknown, what maybe national reports or national or regional or state reports might be available for consideration as we're thinking about the use, prevalence, and impacts of toxics, particularly around agricultural utilization. We had a presentation, I believe it was January or February of this year, that we were presented with data, including the state's data, Department of Ag data, on an increased use of glyphosate and Eric, can you remind me what atrazine, which have an increased utilization as ground cover crop practices have increased significantly. And so it's a work in progress. And I think that maybe I think that the TAC will have had a chance to do a little bit more work, and maybe we'll have Matt give us a presentation on sort of the state of the state as it relates to that, and we can decide how much more we need to do or we need to advocate for as we're trying to get a better understanding on that toxic in soil health, and soil ecosystem issues. But we certainly have been putting a focus on that also.
Sure.
We had 1 or 2 meetings around the future of agriculture. What is the sustainability of dairy, whether it's conventional or organic, our significant investment in the dairy industry as a component of the agricultural sector, and whether and how diversification might improve not only that sector, but impacts on water quality. So that's part of continuing work that we set off on last year. Was disrupted and delayed a bit, but we jumped back into it in January. Senator Bray.
Yeah, well, thanks. Glad to hear. I mean, it's like, from my point of view, it's sometimes we run into controversy, and I think one helpful place for all of us, at least on my legislative experience, is start collecting the data so that we just know what we're talking about and we don't end up being driven by, just stories here and too much anecdote. Like anecdote can get you started, but then we end up needing data to do informed decision making. Another toxic component, and maybe DEC could be helpful to us here, is that there is leachate from the Coventry landfill that comes out. I call it the world's largest sort of disgusting espresso machine. I mean, you put garbage in a mountain, you squeeze it very hard by compacting it day after day, and several tanker loads worth of leachate come out of that, and then they get trucked off. Not all of it, but a good portion goes to Montpelier. So the Montpelier fed into the Dog River right there in the Winooski. The last year I had data for is roughly a year ago, and it was 7.5 million gallons of of leachate from the landfill, including PFAS. So, that's upstream, comes down to the lake, and then I think whatever it is, 160,000 people get their drinking water from Lake Champlain. So for the time being, wastewater treatment facilities that were never designed to detoxify things like PFAS and related chemicals are being used as a means of diluting those chemicals and just flowing them into the river, which sounds very dated to me. It reminds me of the dilution is the solution to pollution era, which was in the 70s or whatever. And I thought we had advanced from there. So again, DEC is working now on treatment and pre-treatment strategies for reducing the toxicity of that leachate. But let me just put that on our plate as one other major source of toxins, because at 7.5 million gallons a year, it seems like a considerable amount of material being added.
Thanks, Senator Bray. I know that our resident wastewater expert, Bob, gave us a tour of his facility when he was running Montpelier, and I think regularly reminds us of the realities of leachate and those alternatives. And so I know that with Coventry relicensing and the Quebec Magog advocacy organization calling for a ban, that it's become a sort of a hotter issue there. But we'll see if we can add in someone to provide some expert education on that too. John, I see you had your hand up.
Appreciate a lot of topics just covered. Two things. I would like to support Senator Bray's comment about getting data before making decisions. I think there's a lot of data with reference to the use of herbicides that needs to be seen. And there is also a lot of data in relation to herbicides that is not collected, that should be collected. The second thing is soil health. I sit on the Ag and Ecosystem Subcommittee of the Climate Council, and all the information we are being presented with is showing the absolute importance and importance of promoting soil health as a way of sequestering carbon, promoting crops, all the good things that, again, Senator Bray mentioned, that can reduce certainly agriculture's carbon footprint impact significantly. I've even seen some almost eliminate it, but that's maybe going too far. But there's a lot of fascinating stuff out there. Heather Darby, Alyssa White from the UVM doing some tremendous research. it's exciting times. And if you have time to get these people in to talk to you a bit, the Climate Council is under a huge amount of pressure. I'm actually spending 6 to 8 hours a week at meetings just to deal with Climate Council stuff. And, there's a very compressed deadline. They have to come up with a plan by July, which has to be, vetted and assessed. And, then it has to have public comment. And, they're under pressure to get this out by December 1. And pretty much almost any climate solution is a water quality solution, particularly when it comes to agriculture. So that's my comment.
Thanks, John. Yeah, our resolution and then the follow-up work at the Technical Advisory Committee with Agency of Ag and DEC and ANR folks at the meeting, I think it was clear that we needed to do a better job of collecting and utilizing good data. And so that's been part of Matt and Neil, their consideration and feedback within the Basin program and then with the state related to that. So full agreement there. And then I know that a few of our members have asked that we try to find a way on how our work can be informed by and collaborative with the work of the Climate Council, perhaps the work of the to be formed Governor's Commission on the Future of Agriculture in Vermont, which I'm not sure what the status is of that, but I understand that it should be developing membership. And then also with what the work of the newly created Ag Innovation Board is, which is the reincarnation of the Pesticide Advisory Council and how that will function. So I guess we'd like to try to find a way that we can find some representatives of those committees to work with us and share some of their work and some of their insights and have the opportunity for us to be better informed and then how it might inform our work moving forward. Senator Brock?
One of the committees that you may be referring to, there is I'm not sure about a committee on the future of agriculture in Vermont, but there is a committee on the future of the dairy industry in Vermont. And perhaps that's the one that you're referring to.
Well, no, I know the governor announced that he was creating a new commission on the future of agriculture. And the last I heard, there hadn't been any work in initial membership formation. I know there's a Dairy Council and a few others. And
well, there is also a new commission on the future of dairy in Vermont that the governor has just appointed. And the commission has just had its first substantive meeting about a week ago, and I'm a member of that commission.
Okay, well, perhaps you could share with us sort of a status at our retreat.
Sure.
That's that's not the future. I think that the future of agriculture is beyond, including but beyond dairy and where the other opportunities are. So possibly it might include agroforestry. Any other thoughts or comments for topics for our retreat and moving forward, Senator Bray?
I just wanted to respond to something John Roberts was sharing. And so in terms of the connection with, because it's already on the list, people brought up let's see, having to catch up on, I think it was Wayne who had said climate change. We don't talk about it all that often, it seems, other than on the carbon sequestration side, but it is the annual report of EAN, Energy Action Network. I don't know, this will come out backwards. No, I'm having a little trouble getting this right in front of the camera. So the annual progress report, EAN, they just published this year's edition, and it's on EAN's website. And so agriculture is up to 16% of the emissions for the state of Vermont. And usually we haven't talked about it all that much, but as we bring down some other percentages, it's a growing percentage of what remains. And so, and I know that ag, most of my 13 years in the legislature, has been in a tough position financially, usually because of milk prices. That said, it seems as though when we're going to talk about climate change and resilience and all the rest, that agriculture, especially Vermont, I think it's 13% of our land mass as well, has a big role to play. And then the last thing, and I'm feeling very conspicuous for having spoken way more than I ever intended at my first meeting. I thought I was going to listen all night long, say not a word. But I just finished a book that I want to recommend in case anyone has spare. This is always coming out backwards. The Hidden Half of Nature, The Microbial Roots of Life and Health, by a guy named David Montgomery, and second author is Ann B. Clay. So there are a dozen things that I've talked and learned about in the legislature in the last decade are all knit together, and it's one of those John Muir things where they say when you tug on anything in nature, you find it connected to the rest of the universe. So all these conversations between soil health, water quality, healthy food, human health, toxics, they seem like they're all related in that book. And if anyone wanted to read about it from someone who, serious scientist who also speaks in a very approachable way, I can't recommend the book too highly. Best book I've read on environmental issues in 10 years.
All right, thank you. So we're just coming to a close on our meeting. We'll work on the final retreat planning, agenda, timing, location, and follow up on the issues and items brought up and see if we can find some good folks to support presentations, updates, just some good education for us as we're working. Any other issues anyone wants to bring up before we move on? We'll be in communication over the next few weeks with further details. If you could all hold the July 21st and 22nd as sort of a save the date for now, and we'll get back with details. But any other thoughts, comments, concerns?
I had something after going to the to that conference a couple of weeks ago. I wonder if the way that we're providing help to the agricultural community is the best way, that state agencies, the way they're providing help is the best way to provide help. And I wonder, maybe Eric, you have, a view about this, but I know you can't speak for every farmer, but the idea of putting things on a website for people to check, or coming up with best practices, that how are people supposed to know about all this stuff, is how are we really providing help to the agricultural community when we learn about new things? How do they know what to do, what not to do, what month it is, what year it is? It seems like it could be a very labor and time intensive thing to try to keep up with what to do. And I just wonder if we could change the model around and have it be something where we really kind of, the state really kind of goes in and just says, here's everything for you to know this month, January 1st, and here's everything to know February 1st, and something where we're really helping rather than saying, here, come find out about it on your own. So.
John?
Well, Carol Odie, you speak exactly to what I do. I'm the executive director of a 100-farmer organization, and one of the things we do is get information out about all these deadlines and all new techniques. The other thing that is we have an incredible extension service in the state of Vermont, and they do a huge amount of work getting out new techniques, new ways of managing the soil, ways of managing your farms. The agency, and part of this is a recognition that if you did something along the lines that you suggest for the Agency of Ag, you would have to spend a hell of a lot more money on the Agency of Ag. They would have to have many more people. You always have to make these choices of balancing. You've also got Hillary Solomon and the organization she works for, who work extensively with farmers on a voluntary basis, trying to, teach them, train them, present new techniques so that we do a better job than we've done in the past. We're learning, constantly learning. And so, I do agree that we need to review the way we transmit this information to farmers. Sometimes farmers lose track of all the different people who show up on their farm, whether it's a regulator, an educator, an informer, in a good sense, or a whatever. And sometimes there's just a mass of people, and farmers, as you mentioned, are dawn to dusk workers and beyond dusk workers, and so sorry, it is something that should be looked at and reviewed, but there is an extensive voluntary network of people out there trying to get that information out.
Eric?
Yeah, it's just, I kind of support what John said, but I think the state's biggest challenge is just keeping up with the consultants that we use and the information that they bring in. The idea of having a one-stop shopping for information for dairy farmers, especially, it's just will not happen. It takes specialized people. It takes, in case on my farm, there's numerous consultants that come in, and in my mind, they're worlds ahead of a lot of the agency and whatever. Even though the agency does a great job, again, the science that we're using on the dairy farm today versus what we were just a little while ago, it's night and day. It's just absolutely night and day. And I don't think that your approach can keep up.
Well, thank you. Thanks for that, but thank you. I learned a lot from that answer. Those answers.
Okay, thanks again. I think we've reached our time. Look forward to seeing you all. Katie and I will follow up. If anyone has any thoughts or comments, feel free to reach out to she and I and Sarah, and we'll try to put together a package and details with an agenda and location for the retreat as soon as we can. And again, thanks again. Looking forward to seeing you all, and hopefully we can have our recently departed members there so we can thank them. I know they all put a lot of heart and soul into the work on the committee for many, many years, and deserve our thanks. So I guess a motion to adjourn from someone would be great.
So
I make
moved.
the motion.
Eric, thanks. Second,
Second.
and thanks, Lori. Enjoy summer as it's approaching in a week. And as I noted, everyone needs to do a rain dance for gentle soaking rains. No sediment flash runoff, just gentle soaking and recharge. Everyone's dying for a little bit of rain, and particularly the lake.
We might need to vote on that.
Oh, I think you just need to go do it.
No, no.
Vote
the
on adjournment?
motion.
Oh,
Thank
Any
you, Chris, for
objections?
joining us too. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great.
Thanks. Welcome, Senator Bray, and we look forward to seeing you again. Or I guess welcome back. You were here not long ago.
Well, thanks for the welcome. It's good to see many of you. Since we lost our State House gig where we used to get to see folks regularly. So hopefully we'll all be back in that building next year to do this work.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
thanks again, everyone. Have a
Thank
great
you.
rest of the week.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.